Everything's not sunshine and roses out there. Sometimes things are going to happen. When those things happen, it's important that teams get engaged toward stopping whatever situation was going on, preventing it from occurring. But then it's important at the onset to communicate any of the information related to that situation. It could be a very awful situation, and bad news is not going to get better with time. So even though it's bad news, it's going to be a hard conversation. We'll no doubt have some level of emotions related to it. I think it's still important to expedite that communication up through your leadership so that management and leadership can help knock down any barriers, establish other partnerships, bring in assistance to help with the corrective actions and incorporating ways to make things better and prevent them from occurring.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's guest. As the manager of safety at Eversource Energy, he supports capital projects, transmission, offshore wind, and operations services, ensuring safety protocols are followed. With a career spanning over 3 decades, including 19 years as an EH&S manager at Pratt & Whitney, he has a wealth of knowledge in environmental health and safety management. His background as a facilities engineer and prior experience on the UTC Energy Council highlight his technical proficiency in energy management and utility operations. He has over 35 years of experience in the facilities industry. Please welcome Tom LeBlond. Tom, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Jay. Thanks for that opening as well. I appreciate hearing it said back that way. Seems like it was a very good career.
Well, I believe it was and is a very good career. I think it's accurate, Tom. Would you not?
I would, yeah. And I appreciate the chance to share some of that with your listeners today. Experience is one thing that you can only learn one way, and that's through gaining that experience day in and day out.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's a good training, right? Experience is a good trainer.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, hey man, let's just jump right into it because you have so much experience to share. I don't know how we'll get it all into one show. Who knows? Maybe we'll do 2 shows. But, I'll start with this, Tom. Over the years, what has been your biggest lesson learned as a facilities manager and leader?
You know what I'd have to say it is I've been able to surround myself, Jay, with persons that are very good at what they do. There's no way that I could handle and do everything on my own. So I've had the opportunity to hire some very, very good people, and then surrounding myself with that talent, their technical acumen, their personalities, their communication skills, their ability to perform day in and day out is really what has made what I think is a good level of success in coming to work each and every day. I do one thing when I'm interviewing people and asking them to come onto the team is I'll come right out and ask them if they're competitive. I don't like being second in anything. And the teams that I've had a chance to work with, both locally now as well as in my prior career, have always been very competitive in nature. And we strive to be number one every single time in every aspect that we could be in. So it's important that I let them know ahead of time the competitiveness of the team that they're coming on, and are they going to be able to deal with that level of added pressure per se. And in all cases, I think we've been very successful.
Has there been anyone who answered no to that question?
There was a person that did answer, actually a couple people now that you mention it, that would question why the competitiveness, why do we have to compete? And, we would share our expectations back and forth, and that, the internal drive that I had is going to manifest itself. And I wanted them to be aware of that. We still went ahead with those persons. my opinion, they grew in their competitiveness because they could see the team's success. And when you're at the top and others are noticing that, and if you look back at the organization at Pratt and the success that they had in their safety performance, their EHS performance, it's all because of the persons that worked outside of the office that I worked in.
Yeah, that's very true. I'd see it day to day when I went up, not day to day, but when I did go up, and it was very evident. I've never heard, I didn't know you asked that question in your interview. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
With the team members and surrounding yourself, and you've always been that type of person the whole time I've known you, Tom, very, very humble in the sense that it's not what you do, it's what the team's doing. How do you, what are some best practices that you've found to really work to support this throughout the years?
So one of the things that I have to do personally is I need to really try and keep it simple. And simplistic, so that I can understand it. But also needing to recognize that the simplicity needs to convey itself in a manner to others that don't know that type of business. The persons that are doing EHS, that are doing health and safety, that are doing facilities engineering, they know what's in the pipe, why it's in the pipe, where it's going, et cetera. Whereas the persons that we're supporting may not have that same level of understanding. So simplicity, I think, becomes the key to, part of it. I do say that listening and being able to listen to the subject matter experts, if need be, to management, leadership, executive suite, persons, being able to listen, take advice from them, be patient when you're listening, and ensuring that you have that full understanding, I think will make a more efficient deliverable to whoever your endpoint customers may be. And then finally, when you talk about the different organizations, whether it be from the C-suite all the way down to a craftsperson or anybody that you might be working with, is building those relationships and understanding the partnerships, going back and forth. The relationships, I think, allow us to share with one another, what the expectations are from both sides, what our deliverables need to be, what can we deliver, when can we deliver it, and then, making sure that relationally we're following back up and saying, hey, did we meet your expectations? Everything that you were looking for? If not, what could we do different, better, faster next time that we have the same opportunity?
Can I jump back real quick to the simplicity point, Tom?
Sure.
So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to give an example or a couple of examples because of your depth of experience. I'm sure we have EH&S professionals listening. And is there any example you could give? I love what you said. So how could you frame that for really, and maybe it's just me, but a little further understanding, like an example, like any type of example?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I think works well to try and simplify things is the development of either a sequence of events or process maps, so that when we're talking to one another about a certain situation, we could say, well, it was at this situation, this sequence of the events that it took place, and we missed this sequence, therefore this happened. Trying to, use a sports analogy, the X's, the O's, and putting them in perspective so that people understand, where each piece comes into play. I think that, is an example of the simplicity, using those process maps or a sequence of events to help us have an understanding of, hey, here's where we started. Here's point A. We were trying to get to point B. It didn't go in a straight line like everybody would efficiently hope it would. It took a little bit of a, circuitous route around there, but it was still a route that we got to B. And, maybe we can be better next time. So that's just an easy, quick example of, simplicity without being too tactile instead of, more of a strategic understanding of it.
No, that's helpful. Yeah, that's very helpful. You touched on, so back to relationships and partnerships, you were talking about them. I love what you said about not to skip over the listening piece. That's probably one of the most critical for most people. But with the relationships and partnerships, I think you started talking about communication. I've watched you communicate and communicated with you for years now. What would you speak about? How would you speak about communication in its place?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I try and communicate with persons or business units that I might be supporting is, here's what we know, here's where we're trying to go. For example, in the organization that I work in now, this group did not exist when I came on board. I had the opportunity, the honor to build it. It was a green team, and one of the first things we had to do was build those relationships with our business partners. Hey, here's what we're here to do. We think this is the path we're going to take. This is our annual plan. Would you kindly, take a look at it, communicate back to us if we're on the mark, off the mark. So I think communication comes down to, people talk a lot about, the aspect of communicating through the word. There's still a lot to be said for sitting down, putting things on paper, pictures, graphs. Here's what I have for information. Here's where I think we can go with this. Here's some ideas, storyboards, various things like that, so that people can take that big picture, communicate it, boil it up, communicate it, to whoever it need be. But that communication, and I'll go back to the word simplicity, that communication has to be simple enough so that all persons in the organizations, from the tip of the spear, the end of the shovel, whatever analogy you want to use, to, leadership and management, all have that same understanding of what was communicated.
How do you ensure that they actually understand it? Because you have we're talking, what are we talking, safety or whatever, however you would like to answer that, actually.
Yep. So, and I think it bodes whether it's safety or utilities or facilities operations, anything like that. The only way that I find that I can personally ensure, is to trust and verify. I would absolutely tell you that when I go in the field, and we're in the field often, several days a week. I cover 3 states. I have great safety advisors in each state, and we'll communicate on a regular basis: phone, Teams messages, Zooms, text. So having that dynamic communication always in place is kind of the way that I think we're ensuring that the information is getting to where it needs to be. But still, when I get the opportunity to join these persons in the field, I trust that they've been communicated with, but I will verify by trying to, re-engage some portion of what the communication was supposed to be driven toward. It might be a grounding situation. How are we going to ground this? What's our expectations on the grounding policy? And we'll put a focus event out there on grounding and communicate all that information. We'll bring in professionals to help make sure that the training and the baseline understanding is very hard and fast. But then we will verify in the field that information is getting out there efficiently and at its optimum level of understanding.
Excellent. Trust and verify. Great framework. Excellent. I believe you shared something about bad news, but I don't remember your exact words, how it applies to communication.
So sometimes things are going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's not sunshine and roses out there. Sometimes things are going to happen. When those things happen, it's important that, teams get engaged toward stopping whatever situation was going on, preventing it from occurring. But then it's important at the onset to communicate any of the information related to that situation. It could be a very awful situation, and bad news is not going to get better with time. So even though it's bad news, it's going to be a hard conversation. It's going to be an awkward conversation, probably. will no doubt have some level of emotions related to it. I think it's still important to expedite that communication up through your leadership so that management and leadership can help, knock down any barriers, establish other partnerships, bring in assistance to help with the corrective actions and incorporating incorporating ways to make things better and prevent them from recurring.
I like, if I could restate that or repeat it, bad news doesn't get better with time. I think that's very well said. Get it out there immediately. And I was telling, I forget, a couple of people that you were coming on the show, and I was very excited about that because, you have so much to offer. And I said, yeah, Tom's a great guy. We get along really well and can't wait to hear what he has to share. We've had a couple of rough spots in communication in our time together too. And I said, because he was doing a really good job of being a safety officer, if you will, or a safety manager. And it was always very upfront just to verify what you're saying, real world, go back a handful of years. And that's exactly how it played out. And we're better for it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you still remembering that. Situations were what they were. But if we don't have that communication at that point in time, then it's two different paths, two different routes to get to where we ultimately need to go with, keeping everybody safe, getting them home safely, getting them home better than they started their morning with, But having that expeditious, very transparent, communications, I think is what we all need to strive for. You cannot over communicate day in and day out. You just cannot over communicate.
Agreed. I don't want to overdo the safety aspect, but I don't think it can be overdone, So I think that's a topic that we should dive into a little bit further if you'd like. I'll kind of let you take that wherever you'd like. I don't have a specific question formed for you, but you have so much experience. What would you want to share around the topic of safety with us?
So, my career, half my career at least, has been tied to safety. Safety has all kinds of, management, policies, procedures. At the end of the day, safety is one of the highest percentages is the relational aspect of it. And demonstrating that you're in the field caring for people and having them understand that, sure, there are policies, there are procedures. Those policies and procedures were probably written because somebody else had sacrificed, unfortunately, to be able to end up in an area that was, in an uncomfortable or an injurious type of situation. So those policies and procedures are needed, but I think how they're delivered and the relational, like I said, the relational aspect and having that day in and day out communication with people so that they understand, we're here for you. We would like to proactively work safely with you. Is there anything we can review ahead of time to make sure that we're staying within the boundaries of policies and procedures so that we can put that aside? We're working to the context of the policies and procedures so that from there on, it's, decision-making 101. What is making these persons make certain decisions? With the policies and procedures there, if they still choose to deviate from those policies and procedures, then why is that? And the only way to learn that is to develop relationships with people. I talked about building relationships and partnerships earlier. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could put a percentage on how much of safety is related to, relationships, but I can share with you that it seems a lot easier to have conversations one way or another, good or bad, with persons that you have a relationship with. They understand you're not just out there. We're not safety cops. I tell people the lights on my truck are yellow, just like the lights on your truck. They're yellow. They're not blue. They're not red. We're here together. The persons that pay us for this type of work that we do are the same persons that are paying other persons in the organization. we're all pulling the rope the same exact way. We just happen to have, in my case, 3 states to cover and a little bit of offshore wind stuff. But the relational aspect, once again, of safety is, to me, a very high percentage. Knowing that we can trust each other, that we're going to be transparent in our communication with each other, and that if something is deviating from where we think it should be, based upon the math, the data, the science, then that's when we need to have those conversations and use that relationship, toward the betterment of everyone. I just want everyone to go home the same way that they started or better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think what you just said about, well, a lot about the relationship, but how you're not a safety cop, I think is what you said, right?
Right.
The way I view that too is how is the team or the crew or the vendor looking at you when you walk through the building or the buildings? Are they seeing, oh no, here comes Tom? Or is it an opportunity to up our game and to say, hey, these things are going well. Let's ask him a few questions and see what we could do even better. It's like, what's the lens you're looking through when you see your safety team approaching, if you will, right? I think it's...
Yeah. So it's interesting. People will ask me, what's different compared to where you used to work before? I've been at this job now five years compared to where I was 35 years prior. And one of the things that I noticed when I came here is proactively, we are being called into conversations early on. And it's part of every meeting, every single day, every part of the day. No evolution of works takes place without a safety brief and consideration of safety. So it's a little bit different. Not that, where I was before was wrong. It's just different. That's how I answer people when they ask me, what's different? One isn't better than the other. It was just different. And it's been very supportive of the transition from where I was to where I am today.
So happy to hear that for you and your team.
Yeah.
That's excellent. I want to dig a little deeper, Tom, because you have, in the past, we've talked about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, with safety, you justify the decision through, was it science or math or both? And then how that,
So
right topic there?
Yeah. So what we're talking about, Jay, is as we go into safety conversations, let's say something happens or you come upon something that maybe somebody's not kind of following the rules or have placed themselves in a certain predicament that could have an awful outcome for them. What I've noticed is instead of just, trying to start up some emotionally engaged conversation, is having the math, having the data, having the information available, the science behind it, any sort of citations or information that can be tied back to the black and white, for lack of a better term, so that we can refer back to that and say, here's why I'm trying to alter the way you might be, or suggesting an alteration to the way that you're doing something, because the math says you're at risk. And here's, the mathematics behind it. And I've learned through my experience that being able to show that, to me, seems like it justifies to the conversation that, it's not an emotional situation that I'm here. It's because I want to see you get home safely every day. I care about you, want you to be able to put, food and drink on the table for your families. And here's why. It answers that question, why, using the backup data like that, instead of just trying to rely on emotion.
I'm sure that's produced much better outcomes for you throughout the years too, approaching it that way versus any other.
It has, in my opinion, it has worked well. It may sometimes slow down the ability to react quickly, because you want to have all this information your justification package. So you got to kind of balance that. That's kind of a defensive position, and defense may win games, but offense brings in people into the seats. So you got to balance that offense with that defense, because if you're too defensive, then you can never proactively be driving forward and moving forward like an offense would. So it is a balance.
Great view of it. I have to stick on safety. You said something to me once. It was something around human beings being fallible, or building systems around something around that topic.
Yeah, it was, at the end of the day, one of the programs that we have here is our human organizational performance. And the fact of the matter is, as humans, we're going to make mistakes. It's in our nature. It's in, you throw in pieces of complacency, you get normalization to work, you get risk averse to work, and that's all just human nature. And one of the things that the team that I work with, we try and do is, how did the human organizational aspect, the human going in to do this work, where did we let that person down? Is there something systemically? Are there direct controls that we could have put in place? Hard fixed barriers that would have prevented a person from stepping into a certain area or putting their hand into a certain area. So, not that we don't trust humans, but the humans, obviously myself included, we're going to make mistakes, and we need to be prepared, and our systems have to be prepared to prevent from the opportunities that those mistakes may present to a person.
That's excellent. I like how we had talked a while back about how you build, well, you kind of just said it too, how you build the systems around that fallible human being to make sure that it all works. That makes a ton of sense. In terms of, I think in your current world, and maybe your prior too, either way, when events occur, there's something around, can we have a discussion around that, Tom, and when events occur and how it's handled? And I think you said something to me once about not discriminating.
So events are events.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather not discriminate from what would seemingly be a very minor event to one that could be a major event, a significant event. By treating them all similarly, we at least minimally will do an analysis of what the incident was to find out, hey, systemically, what could we change? How did we put processes in place to prevent this from happening? Was there a deviation from that process? And obviously, as the significance of the event takes place, whether it be a first aid or a recordable, all the way up to a significant injury or fatality, that rigor would just increase from there. The assessment, the analysis, the follow through, all of that assessment process, identifying, hey, here's a sequence of events that were in place. Where did that sequence fail? Or what part of the sequence did we choose not to do that may have driven, a certain decision to be made or something to fail around the controls that were in place. So not discriminating kind of builds that information, gets us used to doing it as well, from the standpoint of when you do have that more significant event, you have that that muscle memory, for lack of a better term, that you're going into these events, these incident analyses with the same program, process, rigor, discipline, all in a box, a toolbox that you're going to follow. I'm not necessarily an advocate for one root cause analysis tool or another, as much as I am, let's get the facts, the figures, the information together and identify opportunities for improvement. Trying to blame someone and blame things, it's just going to delay what could be a successful, return to work possibility for the person or the program.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a couple of follow-up questions for you on that, Tom.
Sure.
And I think you answered it, but maybe you could summarize for the audience, the people who haven't faced as many of these things, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously, this is your experience. When events occur, two things. Best practice around preparing. I think you said you get used to it, but how would you frame it again? Hey, these are the 2 or 3 things that are best practices to not discriminate when an event occurs, or how to be prepared.
I think one of the first things is communicating up so that management leadership understand. Okay, I'm going to be a little tied up right now. I get this situation that I'm working on, so that they understand and then can say, if you need any help, call back. We'll get you some help. So I think that first step of communication. And then, quite frankly, I find it quite enlightening to get eyes on the situation. If you have to drive from one state to another, or have one of your advisors, be that frontline person to get that information, getting a set of eyes on a situation, and then going back to what we opened up with, having the situation be encircled with the technical experts. It could be, the project manager, the engineers, the safety advisors, and then simply quarterbacking the information and compiling it into a methodology to be able to succinctly be communicated, whether it be PowerPoint or whatever sort of, presentation mode you want to do, getting it to that end point, so that now we can identify, hey, here's the corrective actions. We're going to always be striving for engineered solutions. Administrative controls are fine. PPE is fine. But wherever we can put an engineered solution in, a hard fix, that's what we're aiming for. And
a little bit more about that, please. A couple examples of an engineered solution, Tom.
I think if we look at things like, guarding on machines, if we look at, grounding practices, if we look at de-energizing an entire system so that you can work on it fundamentally at little to no risk, how can we engineer and transfer the power to another circuit, for example, so that we can work more safely on this, or put in other opportunities related to how we manage the system that would allow us to work safely.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Instead of using fall protection or ladders, can we use an aerial lift or assemble a panel before we bring it up, that type of thing, so do the work at the ground level, then bring it up to whatever height it needs to be. So taking a look at the process steps and where we can engineer solutions into that would reduce or remove the risk is the ultimate goal here.
This is great stuff. And for anyone listening that might be interested in more, I'll make sure we can provide a electronic transcript of what Tom's saying, because you just really laid out a whole step-by-step process with some really good examples there, Tom. Thank you.
Sure.
My other question is, what about parties? How do you handle, and again, with your experience, how have you handled parties that don't want to, let's jump back to, that do want to discriminate? Oh, it's just first aid. It's not a big deal. Or, how have you handled or suggest handling those who don't comply as easily or as well?
So it's a very good question, because it would be easy, right, for us to say, no, you don't have to analyze that situation. It was just a couple stitches, no big deal. But once you start doing that, I think you start feeding like a positive influence to that situation. If you're going to let one situation fly, where do you draw the line as to where the minor versus major, et cetera, type of situations are? And I don't think you can be consistent, not purposefully, But, I just think it would be tough to be consistent if you don't do all of them kind of the same way. Now, some of them are going to be in and out, whatever, same day type of information. Some of them are going to take a lot of, assessment and analysis. But to not do something, I think, sets you up for inconsistency, but also provides like a positive influence back to the person saying, oh, I got away with it this time. It's not a big deal. I didn't, nothing negative happened. The guy got, re-wrapped up his finger and he moved on type thing. But what's that also saying to that employee, right? Well, it's too bad you didn't get hurt worse more, or because then we would have gotten more engaged to prevent it from happening again. So I personally, I just can't let it go. I have to treat everything at least at a baseline level.
Very sound advice. Thank you. Thanks for expanding on all of this so much, Tom. Is there anything else around that you think we should touch on at all? Any of this?
What I would say, Jay, is don't ever be afraid of asking for help. I mean, there's so much information out there, and there are persons and pockets of excellence each and every day that you come across. It might just be a phone call. It might be somebody you bump into, but don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so much stuff that can go on, and to think that one person would have all of that information available to them day in and day out, and be able to communicate it, convey it, and demonstrate it, that's asking a lot. Which is why early on I said the reason for the success of the organizations that I've had a chance to work with, and the persons that I get a chance to work with each and every day, is because we kind of rely on each other. I've surrounded myself with extremely good persons.
I'm going to leave it right there before we're going to need a part two, because you just wrapped right back to your first point. Really, it's the team and the collaboration, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, Tom, outstanding. I don't know how long it's been, but we've learned a lot from you in the past half hour plus. I know myself, well, I do know a bit about you, thankfully, because we've known each other, but the audience would probably want to know more about Tom LeBlond and what makes you tick, and whatever you might like to share.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I have the honor of is being, father to three wonderful children. Right? They're still children, even though they're, at my age, they're a little bit older now. But I have a daughter out in Colorado Springs. I have one of my first son is down in the Duke Medical Organization, and my third son is still with us. And I tell him, he can't leave, because if he does, I don't know who's going to fix my phone or my computer or anything else like that. So he's going to have to stay with us as long as he can possibly stay with us. All that's held together with my wonderful wife, Denise. She kind of, is the glue that kind of really keeps us all together. I know it's kind of cliche, but when you look at, I get the chance to go out every single day and work and come home and, provide for them as is. But the management of the household and everything that goes in with it, really comes down to, a wonderful job that my wife does, in providing all that for us and keeping us organized and on track and doing that so well. I graduated from Maine Maritime in 1983. I tell people that's way back then. That's when the ships had sails. That's how long I've been at this. But that being said, there was great start to facilities engineering, and learning some of the utility business and providing generation and power for various organizations. Just an awesome institution, and been able to parlay it into 35 years at Pratt, and now coming on 5 here at Eversource, and don't mind getting up to go to work each and every day. As I said earlier, this is different than what it was at Pratt. Quite frankly, it's been like learning something new. So it's still like, like your first job type thing. It's invigorating to get up. The exposure to the information and the various equipment and the work that's being done is all new to me. So I'm not afraid to ask for help because it is 100% all new for me. But I did surround myself with a good group of persons that recognize how new it is to me and help me each and every day.
Sounds very exciting. Yeah, it's almost like a new career, right?
Absolutely. I don't know that people ever really retire. I think we simply just kind of change careers, Jay, and we try something different.
Reinvent. Good for you,
Yeah.
Tom. Thank you for sharing all that too, and you about your wonderful family. And I just a little bit more. Any hobbies that you enjoy?
I do have a nice BMW motorcycle that when the weather is appropriate, I'll use that and enjoy that. Wish I could play a little bit more golf, but my sport of choice right now is golf. I love watching college sports, but my personal sport of choice is golf. It's just a matter of needing to get out there a little bit more often to chase the ball straight instead of into the woods.
It's usually a little bit of a combo, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, jumping back to what you shared and what we learned, and I'm not kidding when I say, if you want to, and if the audience, I'm sure, would like to hear more, part 2 at some point, because you have so much to offer. How could we fit it in a short amount of time, Tom? Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they wanted to follow up with you? What's the best way to do that?
I would say right now, the email that would work best would be tomden@maine.rr.com. That's TOMDEN at Maine, MAINE.RR.com. That's my personal email. I don't check it as often as I do my work email, but when I do, I'll get back to you.
Fantastic. And I know we've communicated through LinkedIn messaging, and people can find you there as well, right?
Absolutely. That's a very good point, Jay. Thank you for remembering that.
Of course. Well, my friend, thank you. I'm so grateful for your time today and really appreciate everything that you shared with us. Thank you so much, Tom.
All right, Jay. Thank you again. Thanks for asking me. And it's my pleasure and my honor to be able to spend some time with you today. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.